What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. And this week we got UFC 319 taking place in Chicago with the middleweight title as the headliner. Dricus du Plessis defending the belt versus Khamzat Chimaev. That's going to be a very interesting and entertaining fight. But we have a very, very good card overall. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the full card predictions. First fight on the card, we have Brian the Butcher Battle versus Nursultan Ruziboev. Look, I'm very confident that Brian Battle gets the job done here via unanimous 30-27 decision. Look, he could even get a third round stoppage, but Brian Battle is definitely going to be way more technical in this fight. He has way more skill sets to lean on. He has better grappling. Nursultan Ruziboev, don't let his record fool you. Even though it says on the regional scene that he has a lot of submissions, in the UFC, he has not shown any good grappling whatsoever. Dustin Stoltzfus in his last fight took him down. I didn't love that performance. And also Joaquin Buckley, who isn't the best offensive grappler. Joaquin Buckley was easily taking him down and controlling him. Look, Brian Battle, we've seen him get submissions in the past. Gilbert Urbina, Andre Petroski back in the day. He does have good grappling. The only time we've really seen him lose grappling or clinch scenarios against the fence was against Rinat Fakhretdinov, his only loss in the UFC. And look, Nursultan Ruziboev, this fight being at 185 really is going to give Brian Battle plus durability. I think that the weight cut down to 170 was always a little bit hard on him. And I think that now he's going to be at 185. He's going to be full of energy, full of food in his stomach. He's not going to have to drain himself to make the weight. I think that Nursultan's only path to victory in this fight is a big right hand down the pipe. And Brian Battle can eat that all day. Look, Brian Battle, open minus 140, got up to a minus 225, which I think is a warranted, line on this fight. I honestly have Brian Battle, capped around a minus 250 here in this fight. And look, Nursultan Ruziboev, what does he really bring to the table? A big right hand down the pipe. He beat Fajeda with it, and he beat Eric McConaughey with it, and Sadiqa Dumas. But with the in-between moments, winning a decision, he's not that talented. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. His defensive grappling is okay. We saw that in the Dustin Stoltzfus fight, but he went to a gritty, split decision fight versus Dustin Stoltzfus, who I just can't rate at the same level as a Brian Battle, who's much younger, more dynamic on the feet, way more confidence, way better boxing, much better aggression. He's tougher. He's going to push the pace on Nursultan, where Nursultan does not have, anything off the back foot. We saw that in the Buckley fight, where I picked him to beat Buckley there. And look, Brian Battle, I had money on him against Kevin Doucet, had money on him against Randy Brown. He's came through for me, and he's going to come through again here in this position. This is a step down in competition from his last fight against Randy Brown. I mean, we saw against Randy Brown, he was minus 180, minus 190, and I just don't understand how, when you're going into a very similar stylistic matchup against a worse opponent, how the odds are even less. He got down to a minus 150, back up to a minus 170. That's just very intriguing to me. Nursultan Ruziboev on paper seems like he could give him some issues. He has the long reach, has a little bit of pop, but look, I loved that high left elbow guard that Brian Battle was using against Randy Brown, because he knew that Randy Brown was good with that sniper right hand. He looked really good with his defense in that fight. Got hit to the body clean pretty often, but did enough. He did good work with the kicks, the pressure, the clinch, striking. He did well in all of those areas. I don't care if you give the fight to Randy Brown. It was a very close fight. I could see it either way, but Brian Battle, he got his hand raised there, and like I said, this is a step down in competition. Nursultan, he has no tools whatsoever. No kicks, no jab, just a big right hand down the pipe. Randy Brown, he's out here hitting the Ali shuffle, jab, 1-2, hook to the body, coming upstairs. He's insanely quick with his hand speed, and it gave Brian Battle some issues, but Brian Battle, he's going to be rejuvenated here. He's going to have better durability at 185. He's going to push the pace on this dude. And yeah, Brian Battle is going to win this via 30-27 unanimous decision. Next fight on the card, Klose versus Edson Barboza. Two vets of the game, Jakar Klose. He's been in there with guys like Neal, Bobby Green, and he's always been kind of a win one, lose one guy, never been super active. He did win against Joaquim Silva. I think that was his last win. Took a bad loss to Joel Alvarez last time out. And, Edson Barboza, really looking aged these days. I mean, we remember the Edson Barboza that was hitting spinning wheel kicks and nasty switch kicks to the body on Dan Hooker in his prime. Definitely not the prime version of Edson anymore, but I do like the fact that he's moving back up to 155. Not having to cut all the way down to 145 is going to help him a lot here. And look, he fought Lerone Murphy in his last fight. That's a difficult, opponent for him. Not quite young up-and-comer, but an up-and-comer that's undefeated. Really good boxing, grappling. It was a hard matchup for Edson. Did all right there, never quit on himself. He's been decently durable throughout his career. Justin Gaethje finished him. Giga Chikadze finished him, but he's never been too susceptible to getting knocked out clean very easily. Jakar Klose, we've seen him knocked out in the past. Joel Alvarez TKO'd him. Beneil Dariush got him with that big left hand in a scrap. But I think that Edson Barboza definitely has more miles on the clock. He has more miles on the car, per se. He's definitely the more withered fighter. But like I said, coming up to 155, it's going to help him. He's going to be the cleaner striker here. He's going to be able to have success at range with the kicks, switch kicks to the body, spinning wheel kicks, spinning back kicks to the body, leg kicks. He has, TKOs with his kicks with every single level. Very impressive stat from Edson Barboza. Leg kick TKO, body kick TKO, and head kick TKO. But look, Jakar Klose could very well have success here with the wrestling. He's had some success with his wrestling in the past, I believe against Bobby Green and also Joaquim Silva. It's been a minute since I've watched the Bobby Green fight, but, he could get the grappling off against Edson. It's a 3-round fight. He might not get tired. I could see him, kind of pressuring him back, using a little bit of volume. The MMA lab guys like Mario Bautista are pretty good using the volume, getting to that clinch position. He could Mario Bautista versus Jose Aldo this type of fight. So, Jakar Klose could definitely have a Bautista-Aldo performance, but I'll pick Edson Barboza to win a 29-28 decision on damage. All right, our next fight on the card, we have Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. I'm going to pick Chase Hooper to win this one via submission. Look, we know how good Chase Hooper's grappling is. He's an absolute ace with the grappling. Destroyed Borshev, subbed Clay Guida, a legend. Did he submit Jim Miller? I don't even remember if he submitted Jim Miller. I think he actually took him to a decision. But either way, got the job done there. And he's beaten solid levels of competition. A sub over Jordan Levitt as well, who's really good with the grappling, looks good as well. He's really coming into his own. The striking is getting better as well. He has a long frame. And, Alexander Hernandez never really got his UFC career going on any type of a win streak. He's been a win one, lose one type of guy. He's been able to maintain a roster spot. He's coming in on a 2-fight win streak, 2 split decisions, Austin Hubbard and Kurt Hollabaugh. Very, very similar type of fighter there. Older generation fighter. Well-rounded, and the defensive grappling hasn't looked terrible. And I honestly do think that Alexander Hernandez is a little bit better on the feet than a Chase Hooper, but the range is going to give him issues. If you look back at his fight with Damon Jackson was utilizing his reach very well against Alexander Hernandez and utilizing the grappling very well against Alexander Hernandez. Chase Hooper gets this fight to the mat and finds himself a sub in the first 2 rounds. I'll say a second round submission for Chase Hooper. I'll say that he gets himself a mounted guillotine choke on Alexander Hernandez. I think he'll, piece him up at range, get really crafty with it and wrap him up in the second. So yeah, give me Chase Hooper by submission here. All right, our next fight on the card, Mikel Oleksiejczuk versus GM3. Difficult one to call here because both of these guys excel in the other one's weakness. Classic striker versus grappler matchup. GM3 very good with his jiu-jitsu, very good submissions, most submissions in middleweight history. Mikel Oleksiejczuk, he's got big power in his hands, good boxing. He's coming in off of a TKO win against Sergio Dumas after a 3-fight skid where he did lose by submission to Kevin Holland. And he did get subbed up by Michel Pereira. he's been subbed up a lot in his career. We know that GM3, even against guys that are really dangerous on the feet, like Edmund Sebastian, he's able to kind of weather the storm a little bit, trudge through the mud and then get himself a sneaky little takedown, something crafty, and he's able to wrap himself up a sub, because once he does get to the mat, the arm triangles are nasty, the Darce chokes are nasty. GM3 is like a very, very elite submission artist, but the athleticism is kind of letting him down nowadays. He is a gamer, but kind of a journeyman, goes into his fights kind of, drunk off half a bottle of Jack just to kind of loosen up the nerves, but it doesn't really affect him because he, like I said, he's a gamer, crafty vet, goes in there, he's able to pull off these subs, against guys like Brian Barberena. I actually had GM3 by sub like plus 120 in that fight. Look, GM3 is a crafty vet, and it just depends. Can he get to the clinch? Can he get himself a takedown? Because I think if he does get a clean takedown, gets into mount or half guard, I think he can end the fight relatively quickly, because Mikel has never had good submission defense, but he has been working with the fighting nerds. He's the younger fighter here. I think he does see a little bit more of a trajectory to having a longer career. GM3 seems to be, winding his career down to a close. I think we see him in there a few more times, but he definitely isn't, fighting for the future of his career like Mikel Oleksiejczuk is here. He's been it with the fighting nerds, with guys like Rodolfo Vieira. I have to assume that he's been working on his jiu-jitsu, trying to improve in that regard. And I also think it's going to be a little bit easier for a short, stocky boxer like Mikel to stuff takedowns against a GM3, where, GM3, even though he was piecing up RDR and somehow Robert Whittaker can't beat him, but, he was piecing up RDR, was winning a lot of the grappling exchanges there, looked all right on the feet there. He can hold his own, but, it's a difficult one to call. I don't like the look against Brad Tavares, though. GM3 looked a little bit withered in that fight, and I rate Mikel, honestly, a little bit higher than Brad Tavares in 2025. So, yeah, give me Mikel Oleksiejczuk to actually win a decision here in this fight. I'll take him to win a 30-27 or maybe a 29-28. I think he stuffs takedowns, lands damage with the boxing, and GM3 just kind of toughs it out to the end, isn't able to get it. Maybe has a close moment with like an arm bar or something like that. Mikel narrowly gets out of it. But yeah, give me Mikel to win a decision here in this one. All right, next fight on the card, Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Bobby Green. Man, Bobby Green has really had it rough recently. Stained versus Rufi with that spinning heel kick. I mean, ate the canvas bad. That was one of my craziest reactions recently. I mean, that's probably going to get KO of the year. Let's be real. I mean, that was a disgusting knockout. Paddy Pimblett absolutely wrapped him up like a pretzel, subbed him up easy. And, he did have a good performance against Jim Miller at 300, but nonetheless did take damage in that fight. Old Jim Miller, after taking so much damage, was still landing big overhand rights on Bobby Green's chin. He was able to eat him, but still, he was wobbling a little bit. Bobby Green's chin has been severely compromised for a while, and especially since that Jalen Turner, you know what happened in that Jalen Turner fight. Disgrace of a stoppage, but he's had his wins against guys like Grant Dawson, Alaquinta, where he's able to get his KO once every, decade. But I just don't see him having like a Nasrat Haqparast, like prime Bobby Green performance where he's on the back foot, stinging him, winning a decision. I think that Carlos Diego Ferreira, if you look at that Rebecca fight, he does very well with his pressure. He is tough. He is very tough. We haven't seen Carlos Diego Ferreira, finished up much in his career. He's only been knocked out 3 times in his career. Most of the time, if he's losing, it is due to the grappling of his opponent being better than his. You look at Grant Dawson, Mateusz Gamrot, Beneil Dariush. He's losing these types of fights, but when he's fighting, even just well-rounded guys or guys that predominantly strike, he's doing very well in these matchups. Like I said, Mateusz Rebecca, he did very well with his forward pressure. Nice stabbing teep kicks to the stomach. Good leg kicks to slow him down. The hands are on point. And in the end of that fight, he even did very good with his own grappling and eventually got that ground and pound TKO. You look at the Michael Johnson TKO. I really like to look at that fight because I could see something very similar happening in this one. I mean, Michael Johnson is still proving to be a very game veteran who's quick, has great boxing, is a very similar fighter to a Bobby Green, but he's a lot tougher and he can eat a shot. And man, CDF absolutely put the leather on him and knocked him out clean in that fight. And if he hits Bobby Green with something similar to that, it's gonna be out cold. Good night for Mr. Bobby Green. And I actually think that's what I'm gonna pick to happen. Look, CDF, he's going to have the grappling advantage here. He's gonna have the kicking advantage here. I do think he's gonna be a little bit less speedy. I don't think he's gonna get to the mark as accurately or as often with the hands. You know, the volume is going to be on Bobby Green's side with the boxing, but nonetheless, I think that CDF, he's going to land clean at times, trains at Fortis MMA, that's a gym I rate, surrounds himself with, you know, solid fighters, and Bobby Green doesn't present a grappling threat. CDF can go to the grappling if he needs to, he can take him down, he can smudge him against the fence, he can land the body kicks, and ultimately, I think that eventually, second, third round, these guys are both older fighters, I think they're going to slow down a little bit. And as soon as they slow down a little bit and start to get a little bit scrappy, a little bit sloppy, Carlos Diego Ferreira is going to land something. And look, Bobby Green is just not reliable at this point in his career. I think he goes out with a big KO shot from Ferreira. So yeah, that's what I'm going to pick. CDF by knockout. Next fight on the card, Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Look, Kai Asakura, knockout artist from Ryzen. Limited sample size in the UFC. We saw him do okay early against Pantoja. I mean, we know Pantoja's goated. Landed a flying knee, couple right hands, but that's about it. I think he does have that really good Japanese-style front kick, though, that we saw Rinny Nakamura utilize against Nathan Fletcher. I think he does utilize that technique, so maybe he could use that against Tim Elliott here. But look, Tim Elliott, older fighter, decent with his grappling, but kind of goofy on the feet. Doesn't really impose a game plan. He's able to craft his way to a win, sometimes against younger guys like Suma Durji, even Tagir Lembekov a few years ago. But look, I think that Kai Asakura, he's going to be a little bit fresher. He's way faster on the feet. He does hit hard. Even though I don't rate a Ryzen resume, Tim Elliott, he just strikes me like the type of guy who isn't taking his career seriously at this point. Long layoff. Kai Asakura, I think, does get a bounce back win here in this fight. You know, when you're fighting Pantoja, you're not going to be able to defend the grappling. No one can defend the grappling. I think that he makes a fight-to-fight improvement here. Has decent takedown defense. You know, Tim Elliott, more of a jiu-jitsu guy. He's not going to get super clean takedowns, you know, over and over again like a Fluffy, like a Marab. He's not a heavy pressure wrestler. He's got slick submissions, slick grappling, but I don't see him getting more than 2 takedowns around. And I see Kai Asakura landing a lot more damage throughout the course of this fight. And I think that he actually finds a knockout in the first round here against Tim Elliott. A late first round TKO here for Kai Asakura. Just a big boxing combination. Knocks him out cold. Or maybe he hits him with that Japanese front kick to the stomach. But yeah, I'm going to take Kai Asakura. Even though he's a YouTuber from Ryzen, I really don't rate Tim Elliott that highly, especially not in 2025 coming off a layoff. Give me at Kai Asakura by TKO round 1. All right, next fight on the card, we have MVP Michael Page versus Jared Cannonier. Great middleweight fight here. And look, I think this is a very bad stylistic matchup for Jared Cannonier. Look, I picked against Jared Cannonier in his last fight against RoboCop. I said that was going to be a bad TKO loss for him. And look, in the first round, it almost looked like that was about to happen. 2 knockdowns for RoboCop. You know, a big 2-3 and then a big 3-2, I'm pretty sure it was. Knocked down Jared Cannonier badly. And the only reason I really picked RoboCop confidently there was because I know for a fact that the durability of Jared Cannonier is severely compromised at this point in his career. And I went on a rant about it in that video. And I'm going to pick Michael Venom Page to get his first UFC knockout here in this fight. I think he's going to knock him out in the exact same manner that Nasruddin Imavov did. While doing the tape study on this fight, I cannot unsee Nasruddin Imavov pull right-hand counter against the slow, sloppy, overutilized jab of Jared Cannonier. Look, Jared Cannonier, he sticks to the fundamentals. He's not a guy that is going to give you any type of look that you haven't seen before. He is a very reliable fighter. He's crafty. He's accurate. He's game. He has great cardio. He's strong, but none of that helps you when you're fighting MVP because he doesn't have great wrestling. He has okay fence grappling. He does good work in the clinch, great ground and pound, especially when he hurts you. But if you're going to beat Michael Venom Page, you have to be a very, very equipped grappler or be incredibly well-rounded to where you can blend in the takedowns, get the back position, keep it. You know, he even escaped positions against Kevin Holland. MVP, that is, escaped the back against Kevin Holland, who is a BJJ black belt. We know Kevin Holland, even though he's an absolute bum, does have good, jiu-jitsu skills, good chokes. MVP escaped from that position. Didn't even get finished against Ian Gary, where he did take a loss. You look throughout MVP's career, the only losses he's really taken, Ian Gary, Logan Storley, due to the wrestling. Those two fights, of course, he did get knocked out versus Lima back in the day, kind of a fluky situation. But like I said, while I was watching tape for this fight, looked at the Nasruddin Imavov-Jared Cannonier fight, which I was live at. Very good fight, but Nasruddin Imavov was having continued success with the pull right-hand counter. The boxing speed was giving Jared Cannonier tons of issues, and MVP is going to be lighting him up with that pull right-hand counter that he lands on everybody. If he's able to snipe Ian Gary on the chin with it like 10 times in their fight and make Ian Gary shoot for the legs for dear life, he's going to knock out Jared Cannonier, who, like I said, has had so many, durability concerns throughout his career. He's been knocked out. I believe he got knocked out in his UFC debut, took a big knockout loss versus Dominic Reyes. Robert Whittaker head kick TKO'd him all over the place. Didn't actually get him out of there because, Jared Cannonier does have good survivability. Like I said, he does manage to survive a lot of these moments, like in the Derek Brunson fight where he got dropped by an uppercut by Derek Brunson, which is not a good look. But regardless, did come back to win that fight. Izzy didn't do a ton of damage against him, but still a lot of strikes to the head. Marvin Vettori dropped him in the first round. Jared Cannonier was able to regain composure and school him for the rest of the 4 rounds. But still, I believe that was actually maybe a 10-8 on one of the judges' scorecards for Marvin Vettori. He fucked him up in that first round. Just like with the speed, it was that left hand that he does, drop a good amount of people with. We saw Caio Borralho damn near knock out Jared Cannonier. I mean, he knocked the snot out of his nose. Jared Cannonier went flying across the cage. Imavov got him out of there. Gregory Rodriguez dropped him twice. There hasn't been a fight since the Sean Strickland fight. Sean Strickland, don't even get me started on that fucking clown. But nobody, his last 4 fights, Robocop, Caio, Imavov, Marvin Vettori, he has been clipped and hurt badly in all of those and got TKO'd in one of them. The only guy that hasn't really hurt him recently was Sean Strickland, who literally couldn't hurt a butterfly. So MVP, he has nasty striking. You literally can't beat him unless you heavy pressure grapple him. That is not Jared Cannonier's game. Cannonier is a strong, clinch-heavy kickboxer. He's not going to be able to track down MVP like that. MVP is too elusive on the outside. He's going to snipe him with flying knees, right hands. MVP is just an absolute enigma of the sport, and he's going to win this fight via TKO in the second round. He's going to frustrate Jared Cannonier. Cannonier's going to realize he's down on the cards. He's going to rush forward. He's going to overextend with the jab, and MVP is going to pull counter, TKO him. So yeah, MVP gets his first UFC knockout. Next fight on the card, Carlos Prates versus Geoff Neal. Interesting one because, Carlos Prates, we did see him get boxed up a little bit by Ian Gary, but that was with the takedown threat once Ian Gary established the single leg. And, Carlos Prates in his UFC debut, even though he was trying to land the counter knee, which was really why he was eating a lot of those shots, people kind of overplay the Trevin Giles fight a little bit, but, did eat a few shots on the chin there. Geoff Neal is a powerful, powerful puncher, and sometimes if Geoff Neal can really get his pressure going on a Muay Thai style of fighter, you think back to the Luque fight, he can have real success. We know he has nasty, nasty hands from the southpaw stance, beautiful left hand. He was well on his way to knocking out RDA in his last fight before RDA's knee blew out. And Carlos Prates, he also has atomic power. I mean, we saw him, knock out Trevin Giles, one clean shot, just toyed with the leech before staining him. Nasty knee to the body with his Muay Thai, technical skills against Charles Radke. And, he really showed a lot of improvements with his defensive grappling in the Neal Magny fight. That wins aging well. Crafty man Neal Magny still getting it done. That wins aging well for Carlos Prates. He absolutely stained him in the first and did take the loss to Ian Gary, but in hindsight, I actually think that Ian Gary is the second or third best fighter in this division. I really was kind of hating on him in that Carlos Prates fight. I kind of had some biases going into that one. I think we all kind of had some biases, rooting for the aura of Carlos Prates, super entertaining knockout artist, where Ian Gary kind of soy. We know the deal with him outside of the cage. I think we all wanted Prates to win that fight, but Ian Gary really did show up, and I think Ian Gary has also made a lot of fight-to-fight improvements recently. But nonetheless, he did, Carlos Prates, like I said, he improved his takedown defense for the Neal Magny fight, and even in the later rounds of the Ian Gary fight did show, plus grappling, reversing some positions, especially in that fifth round, reverse some positions, was able to get some ground and pound off, and, he has improved in that regard, but all that is basically pointless to say because I think this fight is going to purely take place on the feet, and I think that Carlos Prates is going to knock out Jeff Neal, or I could see it being a slow decision where he kind of, has it clear. It's a 29-28, but he still wins clear. But Jeff Neal, I look back at that Ian Gary fight, Jeff Neal versus Gary. A lot of work in the clinch. Ian Gary had a lot of success with the knees, kind of long-rangey shots. And I think that Carlos Prates is going to have similar success, but he just hits way harder. And I think he is coming back with a determination to get the job done and probably get back in the win column and in the bonus column in terms of getting a 50K bonus for a knockout. Look, Carlos Prates, I think he's going to have a kicking advantage in this fight. We know he used to be, Muay Thai stylist, Nak Muay out there, lived over there in Thailand for many years. He's got great body kicks, great teeps, great knees up the middle. His clinch work is very good. He can sneak the knees upstairs to the chin, and he's very good at countering boxing with that. So I think that we're going to see Jeff Neal blitz in with combinations. We're going to see Carlos Prates look to land, long knees. He's going to long guard, look to kick. I think that we could see Carlos Prates have some success with the kicks and the knees in this fight, more so than the hands. And, but I do think he is going to eventually land, that left hand, probably hurt Jeff Neal. That might start the finishing sequence. But I actually do think that Carlos Prates does a little bit better against an orthodox fighter rather than another southpaw. I think that does help him a lot being in that open stance. But nonetheless, I am going to pick Carlos Prates to win this by knockout, second round, simply because I think he does have the accuracy on his side. I think he has the youth on his side. That range does tend to give Jeff Neal issues. When Jeff Neal's having success, you look at a guy like Mike Perry, you look at a guy like RDA, Vicente Luque, guys that are kind of short and stocky and are going to brawl with him. I think that Prates is going to take a more calculated approach. I don't think he's going to be as forward aggression as he was in the Leach fight. So yeah, I think Carlos Prates is still that guy. I'm going to take him to win by second round TKO over Jeff Neal. But Jeff Neal is live. He can win this fight. He has great hands. And if he starts backing Carlos Prates up with extended combinations like Ian Gary did, it could be a real problem for Prates. All right, we move on to the co-main event of the evening. Aaron Pico making his UFC debut versus Lerone Murphy, bro, give me fucking Lerone Murphy to get it done by decision. Dude, Lerone Murphy is going to win a 30-27 boring unanimous decision, British style here. Aaron Pico, look, I get the hype. He does have some natural abilities. He has had, accolades in martial arts in the past with the boxing, with the wrestling. But he has not proven anything in MMA at a high level. And Lerone Murphy has. And it's simple as that. This fight is going to be the exact same. It's going to play out basically the exact same with a few more takedowns on Pico's side. But it's going to play out the exact same as Mario Bautista versus Patchy Mix. Oh my God. I literally remember right before the Mario Bautista versus Patchy Mix fight. I called that fight perfectly, Bautista by decision. But look, right before that fight started, they even showed it, the little Twitter on the bottom of the screen as the fight starts. Someone tweeted, "The casuals are about to find out, bro. Pitbull's the real deal." The casuals are about to find out. It seemed like they were the ones that actually found out in that fight. I can't stand these people that really try to overhype these Bellator fighters coming over and fighting in the UFC, especially against high-level competition. You know, when you have MVP going in there against Holland, that's different. I picked MVP in that fight, and I love the MVP signing. But giving Aaron Pico Evloev in his debut, dude, Dana White should literally be publicly executed for that shit. I mean, that's crazy. Why would you make that fight? And you're giving him another undefeated top contender here in Lerone Murphy. He has not earned this. He needs to fight fucking Dan Ige or Sean Woodson or like Diego Lopez before he gets this type of fight. But nonetheless, he's in there. Look, Aaron Pico has a very limited skill set. I mean, he has some big blast double leg takedowns. He doesn't have great control, realistically. I mean, most of his opponents do get up. I've rewatched a lot of his tape, mainly leading into the Evloev fight, but it told me what I need to know about the Lerone Murphy matchup as well. Look, a lot of his opponents get up from the bottom, and these guys are just not quality competition. I mean, these guys are like C-level regional fighters that he has been fighting. When he's fought decent guys, Henry Corrales, Adam Boric, who is a good fighter, he's gotten knocked out, and he's not had success unless it's just been an absolute can. And Aaron Pico, he's favored in this fight somehow against an undefeated UFC prospect who's beaten very similar stylistic matchups in his last two fights. But nonetheless, look, Aaron Pico, he does have a wrestling advantage in this fight. We saw in the Dan Ige fight that Lerone Murphy can get taken down, and I won't be surprised if Aaron Pico does get some takedowns here. But Aaron Pico does not have great cardio, he doesn't have great control, and on the feet, he's going to get absolutely pieced up at range. Look, he has some big power shots with his boxing, but at range, he has absolutely nothing. I mean, like I said, he's fighting C-level regional fighters. Like, he's literally fighting guys like me in there, and they're touching him up at range. Dude, Lerone Murphy has been improving with his boxing. We saw that in the Edson Barboza, Dan Ige, and Josh Emmett fights. He's improved his boxing a lot. He has great kicks. He can even implement some offensive grappling. I think that'd be a great game plan. Put the wrestler on his back. Aaron Pico probably wouldn't expect that. And look, Aaron Pico, he's going to be under the bright lights. He's going to freeze up. He's under so much pressure. It's been like this his whole career. He's been thrown into the deep end, all the expectation put on him, and he always comes up short. And it's going to be the same thing here. Lerone Murphy, he's game as it gets, trains out of Manchester Top Team. I rate that gym a lot. He's in there with guys like Ibragimov, who I know for a fact, if they're in there together, that's going to improve Lerone Murphy's takedown defense for sure and his wrestling overall. And we also see guys like, Bo Nickel come over. Their wrestling does not translate whatsoever. I won't be surprised if it's a very similar case here for Aaron Pico. We've seen him have decent success with it in Bellator, but, once you get past the big blast double leg takedown where he throws him across the octagon, when you continue to watch the fight from there, it's like, okay, what is he really doing from here? He's going body, body, head, body, body, head. He doesn't have any submission game whatsoever. The guys get up. He gets tired. His, style is not good for winning a decision. If this was 5 rounds, Lerone Murphy would have it in the bag easy, but 3 rounds gives Pico a chance. But still, I see Pico having success early. He'll back him up a little bit with some strong boxing combinations. He'll shoot 2 or 3 big blast double leg takedowns. Lerone Murphy will get up from all of them. And then as soon as Aaron Pico blows his wad, he's going to adrenaline dump. Like I said, he's going to be under the bright lights for the first time. He's in the big leagues now. Lerone Murphy, he's fought in 2 main events. 3 main events. No. 2 main events recently. And then, on a big pay-per-view card in Abu Dhabi, ranked contender fight. One of the biggest cards of the year. Lerone Murphy's used to this shit. He's used to the pressure. And yeah, I like the composure of Lerone Murphy. I like the kicking game of Lerone Murphy. And yeah, Lerone Murphy wins this via decision. It's going to be 30-27 on one card, 29-28 on the other 2. So yeah, give me Lerone Murphy as an underdog here to win this one via decision. All right, we move on to the main event of the evening. We have Dricus du Plessis, the middleweight champ, versus Khamzat Chimaev, Boris the Wolf, undefeated, absolute Chechen assassin. Insane grappling, definitely the most dangerous wrestling slash submission artist that we have seen in the UFC in terms of just pure danger. Because in the first round, Khamzat Chimaev is definitely the most lethal submission threat ever and that we'll possibly ever see. I mean, it's absolutely unheard of what he's able to go in there and do to guys. Zero resistance most of the time. Whitaker in his last fight, look, I picked Chimaev to beat Whitaker via first round submission, and a lot of people were on Whitaker. A lot of people were on Whitaker in that fight. A lot of respectable people were on Whitaker in that fight. I had Chimaev by first round sub, and look, that's what happened. And Robert Whitaker, he is a guy that can be broken with the pressure. We saw it against RDR. I figured Khamzat, he in Abu Dhabi. We know Khamzat shows up when it's in Abu Dhabi. He's completely catered to when he's over there. It's a perfect environment for him. Even if it goes late, he can get a judge's robbery over there in Abu Dhabi. But look, we're not in Abu Dhabi anymore. We're in Chi-Town. We're in Chirac. We're coming home again, literally. Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. This is not favorable for Khamzat Chimaev. It really isn't, because, like I said, I do respect his skill set massively. And it's a very realistic situation, it's a very realistic possibility and prediction that Chimaev goes in there, instantly hits a low double on Dricus du Plessis, takes the back, chokes him out, rear naked choke round 1, about a minute and 30 seconds into the fight. And I wouldn't argue with you if you picked that. And, it would make a lot of sense for Chimaev to have that early success. I do think he has the welterweight speed on his side. Dricus du Plessis hasn't fought a style of grappler like Khamzat Chimaev. He is just a round 1 problem. He's kind of reminds me of an MVP if you're trying to just purely strike with him. It's like, you can do some things, but at the end of the day, you're still fucked regardless. Chimaev, in terms of the grappling, if he has his way with his takedowns, he gets the back, and he's able to sink in the choke round 1, that's his path to victory. But if that doesn't happen, he's not winning this fight. Simple as. If Khamzat Chimaev does not win this fight via round 1 submission, he's getting knocked out. And I'm picking Dricus du Plessis to knock out Khamzat Chimaev in the 4th round. I think Dricus du Plessis is still one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC. And look, I'm the type of guy who loves a technician. I love a technical fighter, a Peter Yan, a Volk, an Izzy. I love people that are super technical, that look clean, high guard, good defense, nice, crispy, clean shots. I love that type of style, and I tend to have biases towards that type of style. But I have the uttermost respect for Dricus du Plessis at this point. I think once he wins this, you're arguing he's the GOAT of the middleweight division. Look, Dricus du Plessis put money in my pocket on multiple occasions. Strickland, the first time, Strickland the second time. Look, I actually did have Izzy to beat him in that fight. And I had that prediction wrong because, like I said, I do sometimes have biases towards someone who's super clean and crispy against a sloppy fighter like Dricus du Plessis, where he is sloppy, but he's massively effective. He's insanely effective. I thought Izzy would be able to land counter shots. I thought he'd be able to stuff takedowns, be able to win a clean decision or, knock him out with a counter shot. That did not happen. Dricus du Plessis is one of the most aggressive game fighters in the sport. He does not take no for an answer. He's the definition of imposing your will. We saw that in the Whitaker fight. Just absolutely imposed his will on Whitaker. I mean, Whitaker looked like a deer in the headlights. As soon as, Dricus got up from that first takedown, Whitaker looked like a deer in the headlights. And Dricus, he's an absolute fucking unit for the middleweight division. I mean, I swear, Dricus du Plessis, especially in his last fight versus Strickland, I don't know if Strickland just looked withered or what, but Dricus du Plessis looked like he weighed 225 fucking pounds in the cage. Looked absolutely juiced to the gills, massive. And look, Khamzat Chimaev, former welterweight, he's going to be at a size disadvantage in this fight. He's going to be at a speed advantage, but size disadvantage. And I think that in the grappling, if Dricus du Plessis hits a hard sprawl on him, if Khamzat does not have early success, he's going to fall off a cliff. And I'm actually going to predict that Khamzat Chimaev gets a takedown in the first round, takes the back of Dricus du Plessis in the first round, about a minute and a half into the fight. But I think Dricus du Plessis, we know the determination, we know the game planning, and we know the preparation that he comes into his fights with. He always has a trick up his sleeve. He's a tricky customer, and he always has a trick up his sleeve. Dricus du Plessis is going to fight the hands. He's going to survive the rear naked choke / Darce in round 1. He's not going to panic. Dricus du Plessis always stays very composed. He's going to have a strength advantage when they're on the mat. I do not think that Chimaev is just going to be able to ragdoll Dricus du Plessis like he did to Robert Whittaker. I think he's going to get a clean takedown like he did against, Burns or Usman, but I don't think he's going to just absolutely manhandle and crush the jaw of Dricus du Plessis like he did against Whittaker. I even think that Whittaker, without that compromised, mouth injury that he had leading into that fight, I don't think he gets submitted in that position. I think he fights the hands. We saw Whittaker doing an amazing job, fighting the hands, getting out of those positions. Narrowly, he almost escaped the position, but Khamzat is so good at, chaining his takedowns together. He was able to get that sub on Whittaker. But I have Dricus du Plessis surviving this first round. I think he gets, taken down, back taken, hit with some ground and pound shots, but I do not think he gets subbed. I think he focuses on defending the rear naked choke. And after that, look, people have been saying, Khamzat having bad cardio is a myth. That's one of the biggest myths of the sport. Khamzat has good cardio. It's just the pace that he pushes. Look, you can't make that argument when the only 2 fights that have gone over, a round and a half for Khamzat Chimaev, the only 2 fights, the only sample size you have, he has looked absolutely dog shit and has displayed absolutely nothing in the second and third rounds of his fights. In the Gilbert Burns fight, a lot of people had Burns winning that fight outright via decision. They had Burns winning the second and third. A lot of people had Usman winning the second and third rounds against Khamzat Chimaev after, surviving the first. A lot of people had that a draw because they said, okay, whatever, Chimaev 10-8 in the first. I don't have that a 10-8 round, to be honest. It was dominant, but I had that a 10-9 for Chimaev. And then, I scored that fight 29-28 for Chimaev, but a lot of people did score it as a draw or, a win for Usman, 2-1 Usman. Look, I think that we are having an incredible case of recency bias here because of his last performance against Whittaker, where he did look great, but make no mistake, Whittaker is a small middleweight who struggles with pressure. And Khamzat was favored to win that fight. It's in Abu Dhabi. He had all the advantages. Look, Dricus du Plessis is going to survive the first, and he's going to beat the piss out of him in the second, third, fourth round, and then he's going to TKO him. When you look at the second and third round of the Usman and the Burns fights for Chimaev, he's done absolutely nothing good. He's been able to land a couple shots, a few takedowns once they were already, gassed. And those are also older fighters who I genuinely don't rate as highly as Dricus du Plessis. I have Dricus du Plessis as better all time, and especially right now, as those versions of even prime Burns and prime Usman. I have Dricus du Plessis better than both of those guys. Look, Khamzat Chimaev, tell me this. Before you're super confident that Chimaev can possibly win a decision or do anything past the first round, ask yourself this question. When has Chimaev ever displayed striking defense? I know Dricus is sloppy. Don't make a counter argument saying, oh, well, Dricus doesn't have good defense either. Dricus is going to be the one throwing and pressuring. Chimaev has not exhibited any striking defense in his UFC career because he's only been tested twice. Both times, forward pressure and straight shots gave him tons of issues against Burns and against Usman. Tons of issues. Forward pressure, straight shots. Dricus du Plessis is good as fuck with that shit. With his awkward blitz, he's going to go 1-2-1 with nasty forward pressure. He's going to be ready to sprawl if Chimaev changes levels. In that second, third, and fourth round, that's going to work wonders for Dricus du Plessis. I think he's going to implement high kicks where, low kicks, body kicks, you got to worry about those getting caught, getting taken down. You throw a high kick, the only option really is to block unless you shoot for the other leg instantaneously, which most people don't do. Look, Dricus du Plessis is going to have amazing success in the striking late. He's going to survive the first, and Khamzat Chimaev, like I said, he's displayed nothing on the feet, and really he falls off a cliff with every attribute that he has. He doesn't have the fast power in his hands. He doesn't have the fast takedowns, and he's not able to control guys as easy. We saw Usman stuffing takedowns and getting up from takedowns in the second and third round of their fight. Off the couch, an old withered Usman who I still don't think was in his prime at that point and isn't in his prime anymore. Look, if Usman and Burns are going to fucking war with Chimaev, Burns scoring a knockdown in the third round against Chimaev, almost getting the finish, Chimaev's head turned back like a hoot owl. He was, diving for the legs for dear life, getting frustrated, huffing and puffing. I don't care if he's in the fucking gym out wherever he is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on the assault bike with some old coach yelling at him. His cardio base is going to be whatever it is. I'm sure that he trained super hard for the Gilbert Burns fight. I'm sure he trained super hard for the Kamaru Usman fight. Your cardio is going to be what your cardio is as long as you're prepared. It's not going to change that much. That's mainly genetic. And it's also the way he fights. If he goes into this fight, guns a-blazing, trying to get the sub in the first, which is his only way to win, he will gas out. And if he tries to play it patient, he's not going to have success because Dricus du Plessis is much better at pacing himself. He's a much more well-rounded fighter, especially with the striking. Look, Chimaev gets finished up in the fourth round. He doesn't have anything on the feet past the first round. He's going to tire out. No striking defense whatsoever. Can't fight off the back foot. Literally, you've never seen him slip a punch. You've never seen him roll a punch. You've never seen him, block a shot. You've never seen him, check a kick. Rewatch the fights. You haven't seen him display striking defense. He is going to be getting lit up like a Christmas tree by Dricus du Plessis in the later half of this fight, and he's getting finished up. He's going to wilt. As soon as he doesn't have success early, we haven't seen anything since the Whitaker fight. The Whitaker fight did not answer any questions. People going into that Whitaker fight were highly questioning Khamzat's cardio. So many people picked Whitaker by fourth round TKO. Khamzat's going to gas out. Whitaker survives the first. People were saying, Chimaev, he's a pull-out merchant. COVID-19 ruined his career. He's soft now. He's frail. He's living the bougie Abu Dhabi life. He's not, cold and hungry anymore like he used to be. I think people are really forgetting that narrative going into this fight. And I'm not. I'm picking Dricus du Plessis by fourth round TKO. He's going to beat this dude's head into the canvas. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed, like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Enjoy the card this weekend and have a great rest of your day.